This case invoked the subjects of executive/government and jurisprudence. The court first and foremost affirmed that if an international treaty is ratified in Parliament, then it becomes a primary source of law providing broad rights people can directly rely upon as the foundation of an inductive legal argument to obtain remedies in court, which can eventually lead to case law giving very strong substantive legal rights to be relied on deductively. The court also affirmed that the Scottish Government were not allowed to ratify treaties giving rights in non-devolved subjects which the Scottish Parliament did not have legislative competence for. The Scottish Government presented a bill in 2021 to the Scottish Parliament to ratify in full the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child 1989 and the European Charter of Local Self-Government 1985. The UK had agreed and ratified many articles of these treaties but no implemented them in full as such. The Attorney General of the UK Government sought to stop this, and a legal case with the Advocate General for Scotland commenced. The Government were not allowed to ratify these treaties in full as they would have been introducing rights in non-devolved subjects of law which the Scotland Act 1998 did not give them a mandate. The facts of this case were straightforward. The Scottish Government presented a bill to the Scottish Parliament to ratify in full the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child 1989 and the European Charter of Local Self-Government 1985. Before this bill could pass through the Scottish Parliament in full to become an act, however, the Attorney General, the legal advisor in the UK Government, informed the Scottish Government that they were not allowed to do this legally as it invoked non-devolved subjects. The Advocate General for Scotland, the Scottish Government's legal advisor, stated that they were, so the matter went to court. To understand this argument, the concept of devolved subjects has to be understood. The Westminster Parliament is the sovereign parliament of the country of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and the Scottish Parliament is not. The Scottish Parliament is essentially a creature of statute and effectively just like a quango when it comes down to it. Under the Scotland Act 1998, the Scottish Government and the Scottish Parliament are therefore only strictly allowed to introduce legislation in certain specified subjects which the UK Westminster Parliament has granted them permission to, and they are not allowed to legislate on other subjects. The Attorney General, the chief legal advisor in the UK Government, argued that these particular treaties being proposed to be ratified in the Scottish Parliament gave broad rights to people in Scotland which were about non-devolved subjects out with the legislative competence of the Scottish Parliament. The Attorney General therefore argued that the Scottish Government were most certainly not allowed to ratify these particular treaties because they were giving substantive rights to people in areas which the Scottish Government and Scottish Parliament were not allowed to give. The Advocate General for Scotland, chief legal advisor in the Scottish Government, argued that the Scottish Government and Scottish Parliament were not actually giving any direct rights by ratifying these treaties. They argued that ratified treaties were so general, vague and unclear that they were only a secondary source of law, and had more symbolic value legally than actual substantive value. They argued that they were not actually giving any direct rights with these treaties which could be relied on by citizens in any legal arguments in reality, meaning therefore that they were not actually introducing right in non-devolved subjects. The court upheld the argument of the Attorney General that the Scottish Government could not implement these particular treaties because it would grant people in Scotland legal rights which the Scottish Parliament did not have competence to create rights on. The court affirmed that a ratified treaty is a source of primary law which provides broad direct rights that people can inductively rely on to make substantive arguments in court, and with sufficient cases interpreting them can give people deductive rights. The court held that the Scottish Government could not be allowed to implement these treaties as they were on non-devolved subjects. The rest of the judgment was largely a technical exercise going through which parts of these treaties proposed by the Scottish Government to the Scottish Parliament were non-devolved rights which they could not introduce, and approving the other rights in the treaties as within the legislative competence of the Scottish Parliament.